30 people just died this week in Beijing from floods. Not in some remote mountain village. Not in a forgotten inland town. No. In the capital of the so-called second largest economy on earth. Let me ask you something. What kind of superpower builds its political heart in a flat plain surrounded by mountains 100 miles from the ocean, and then pretends everything is fine when people drown during a rainstorm? Welcome to Beijing, a city that shouldn't be China's capital in the first place. It rained hard, roads turned into rivers, cars floated like rubber ducks, subway tunnels filled like bus stops. People died again. And this isn't the first time. Beijing floods almost every year. In 2012, 79 people died in what was called the worst flood in 60 years. Now in 2025, we're back at it, and the government still treats this like an act of God rather than a symptom of systemic stupidity. You build a mega city in a bowl, surrounded it with mountains, pave over the land with concrete, and then act surprised when water has nowhere to go? That is not urban planning. That is negligence with a master plan. So how the hell did we end up here? Why is Beijing even the capital city? Quick history lesson. Beijing became the capital city during the Yuan dynasty in the 13th century. Yes, under Kublai Khan, grandson of Genghis Khan. The Mongols wanted a base closer to Mongolia so they could ride their horses in and out of China. So they picked Dadu, today's Beijing. And then the Ming dynasty kept it as their northern stronghold. The Qing dynasty followed suit, and by the time the Republic of China and the communists rolled around, the bureaucratic inertia was too strong. So the capital stayed in Beijing because it was already in Beijing. No one stopped to ask, wait, is this a good idea still in the 21st century? Spoiler, it's not. Now let's break down why Beijing as a capital city is designed to fail. First, let's talk about the notorious air. Not the poetic kind with cherry blossoms floating on a spring breeze. No. We're talking about the toxic, throat-scorching, lung-blackening kind of air that turns your morning jog into an involuntary suicide mission. Beijing's PM 2.5 levels, those dust particles that seep into your lungs like termites, have at times reached 30 times above the WHO's safe limit. There are days in Beijing when stepping outside is the equivalent of smoking an entire pack of unfiltered Marlboros without the cool, cowboy hat to show for it. And here's the thing, no one flinches anymore. It's become normal. Smog is the new sky. And the culprits? The Gobi Desert, just upwind, loves the sandstorms that roll in like apocalyptic blankets of dust. You haven't lived until you've seen daylight turned blood orange by those sand. And there's the coal-fired heating, mandated by central government to keep northern homes warm during winter. It turns entire provinces into smoke machines from November to March. It's like having a barbecue that never ends, just you're the meat. And next, the surrounding heavy industries speed out pollutants 24/7. Because when your economy runs on steel and cement, clean air becomes collateral damage. And it's not just the haze you see, it's what you don't see that's killing you. PM 2.5 doesn't care if you wear a mask. It slips through your nostrils, lodges in your lungs, crosses into your bloodstream, and silently increases your risk of heart attack, stroke, cancer, and even dementia. How is that for a Beijing souvenir? Doctors in Beijing say they see children with lung function worse than that of chain-smoking adults. And here's the real kicker. The Chinese government used to censor air pollution data. Before 2008, no one knew how bad it really was. And then the US Embassy in Beijing installed its own air quality monitor on the roof and began tweeting real-time pollution levels to the world. At one point, the reading was so high, it actually broke the index. Literally. The US State Department's monitor had to label the air as beyond index. China's response? They accused the US of interfering in internal affairs. Because apparently, accurate air readings are a national security threat. Let that sink in. Meanwhile, inside China, the CCP spun the pollution as a necessary sacrifice for economy. Just breathe it in, comrade. It is the smell of progress. Try telling that to the joggers coughing nonstop, or the school children kept indoors for smog days because recess is too risky. Or the expats who pack their bags after one winter and say, yeah, no thanks. This isn't a city that's adapting to modern environmental needs. It's a capital choking on its own success, literally. Next, as we discussed earlier, there's the annual flood risk. Beijing sits in a basin, low-lying and encircled by hills. So when it rains heavily, all the water flows down into the city. And thanks to rampant urbanization, there's no soil to absorb the water. The result? Stone drains get overwhelmed, streets turn into rivers, and people die like they did this week. Modern capitals shouldn't flood like third world fishing villages during rainy season. And then there's also the water scarcity. Oh, and here's the kicker. Beijing is also one of the most water scarce cities in the world. Yes, the flooding capital is also the thirsty capital. The city is hundreds of kilometers away from China's major water sources and relies heavily on a south-north water transfer project, an absurdly expensive plumbing job that redirects water from the Yangtze River. It's like building your dream mansion in a desert and then realizing the nearest faucet is in another country. Let's look at how other countries pick their capitals. Australia, they built Canberra halfway between Sydney and Melbourne. Plenty of room, planned layout, green space, fresh air. The US, they picked Washington, D.C. on a navigable river between north and south with water access and enough space to breathe. Now let's go back to China. Floods, check. Chronic drought, check. Dead air and toxic lungs, check. Completely landlocked with zero naval utility, check. Whoever picked Beijing as a permanent capital must have also thought that lead paint was a great snack. And let's not forget, rather than relocate, the Chinese Communist Party doubled down. Instead of building new functional capital, they've poured hundreds of billions into polishing this aging bureaucratic relic. So Beijing is a mess. Floods, smog, overpopulation, you name it. The solution? Build a miracle city from scratch just 100 kilometers away. That is Xiongan New Area, Xi Jinping's pet project. A planned utopia. A shiny new clone of Singapore, supposedly. But let me break it to you. Xiongan isn't the solution to Beijing's problems. It is the symptom. The whole Xiongan experiment is like watching a man duct tape a hole in a Titanic and then smile for the cameras. Let's get real. Xiongan sits in the same damn floodplain as Beijing. Same river basin, same flood risks, same climate volatility. The first thing it did after being announced in 2017, it flooded. And again in 2021, and again in 2023. And if you check satellite photos this month, you guessed it, underwater again. This is like putting your second toilet right next to the broken one and calling it smart sanitation. Beijing's leadership sold Xiongan as a strategic pivot. They're going to move non-essential government functions there, reduce population pressure in the capital, and decentralize development. Translation: we don't want to fix Beijing. We just want a shinier sandbox nearby so we can pretend we're visionary. They called it a 1,000-year plan. And they said it would be a green, smart, livable city. Xi Jinping himself said it would be a model for high-quality development. So what did they actually build? A ghost city with half-empty high-rises and more cranes than people. Government offices that no one wants to move into. Train stations that serve daily commuters to Beijing. Meaning, yes, it's still just a satellite dependency. And you know what's missing? People, vibrancy, viability. This was supposed to be China's Shenzhen 2.0. Instead, it's shaking up to be another Potemkin village dressed in futuristic buzzwords. Xiongan isn't just a bad idea, it exposes how fundamentally unfixable Beijing is. Because, instead of rebuilding smarter infrastructure, fixing the drainage system, what Beijing just did is spawn a clone 1,000 kilometers away with same geology, same floods, same problems, different brand. It's a classic CCP move. If you can't solve it, rebrand it. If your house is on fire, just build a new one next door and hope no one notices the flames. At the heart of it all is a spectacular irony. The Chinese government is trying to escape from Beijing without ever leaving Beijing. It's the equivalent of getting a facelift because you refuse to eat better and healthier. It might look shiny for a moment, but underneath, the same decay, the same rot. Xiongan doesn't solve Beijing's problems. It just buries them under concrete 100 kilometers south. But hey, it sounds visionary on paper. And in China, optics matter more than oxygen. Now, why doesn't China move its capital elsewhere? Simple. Because symbolism trumps logic. And the Communist Party likes being exactly where the emperors ruled. It's not about function, it's about optics. Staying in Beijing is a flex, a power move, a statement that we are in charge and we're not going anywhere, even if the city turns into a swimming pool. I once visited Beijing during a so-called blue sky day. Locals were so happy and excited. They're like, look, you can see the mountains today. I looked, I coughed, and I laughed. Because when people go out of their way to specifically celebrate the visible sky, something is terribly wrong. Later that evening, it rained. The subway shut down. Taxis refused to pick up anyone. I waded knee deep through water to get back to my hotel. This was the capital city of a so-called rising superpower. But it felt like an environmental booby trap held together with duct tape and nationalistic denial. Beijing may have served dynasties well when horses were the fastest mode of transport and wars were fought with bows. But in the age of megacities, climate crisis, and global diplomacy, it's obsolete, it's broken, and it's a dangerous place to live. No country trying to lead the 21st century should put its capital in a flat basin, choke it with smog, and starve it of water, and call that progress. It's time to stop pretending this is normal. Beijing is not just a symbol of power. It is a monument to outdated thinking. If this video made you go, wait, what the hell? Hit that like button. Drop a comment. Should China move its capital elsewhere? And if you have ever visited Beijing and survived the air, the dirty water, the floods, or anything else, share your story below. And see you in the next video. Hopefully somewhere that doesn't flood when it drizzles.